Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are in the world today, right now you're on the new way. I'm Dr. Lenny Time. I'm your host here on the new way, and we have coffee. I wanted to talk about alkali earth elements because as I was talking to my guest from Wednesday, he mentioned radium. Now, radium is a radioactive element that is not of much use or much discussion in the world today. But he was saying how its radioactivity of radium was really something different. Howdy, Bruce. I'm talking about alkali earth elements because somebody brought up the concept of radium to me.
Yeah,
You know what radium is?
I do. I had an early introduction to radium because it was the my father had a watch that was, I guess it was issued to him from the Navy when he was in the Naval Air Corps.
Glow in the dark dial?
Glow in the dark dial, and it was radium.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I was so fascinated. I was just a little kid. I was so fascinated. I took his watch apart and ruined it.
It happens with that. Radium is an alkali earth metal. And when somebody mentioned it, I noticed I had to think about it. So I went back to my old periodic table. And you know what else are alkali earth metals? Strontium and barium.
Yeah.
You know why they're in the news right now, right?
Well, they're both being sprayed worldwide with the chemtrails.
Absolutely. And
Sprayed
it's,
worldwide. Yeah.
but the other two alkali earth elements that people know are magnesium and calcium.
Right.
Well, calcium is very commonplace. We find it in chickens
I
that
got to
lay
take
eggs.
my chelated magnesium every day, or I don't sleep it quite as well without it.
Right. And magnesium was implicated in the origins of mad cow disease in Britain in the 1990s.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. Magnesium is, could be implicated in just about anything. Just about anything. That's how important magnesium is.
Yep. And the calcium, well, we've got the chicken and the egg problem. How do chickens produce eggs that have more calcium in them than in the chicken?
Right. Right. Here's another one. This is this is calcium and magnesium, and that's one of the because I don't I eat a really good diet. I've been eating organic for over 20 years. I eat a really good diet, but I think it's important to take supplements because it's important. We don't get enough. The soil is not anywhere near as
Fertile?
fertile would be a word, but I was searching for something else. But anyway,
Well, it's one of those things that when you get to thinking about the alkali earths, they mostly come as cations with a 2 plus charge. So the magnesium and calcium that you're taking, both are either acetates or some other calcium or magnesium salt, and they're
yeah.
not just straight magnesium metal or calcium metal.
Well, of course not. No.
And in fact, the electronegativity of the elements virtually ensures that they ditch the two electrons in the s orbital to become uh, cations with a 2 plus charge. The
Yeah. So they're
alkalis
becoming that
next
much
to them,
more reactive. In other words.
yeah, the alkali metals next to them, like sodium and potassium and lithium, ditch electrons too.
Right.
So I've been working with Mike Wilkerson's Stellium 7, and he's turned me on to a guy named Analog, Ben, who I'm going to be talking with on Wednesday. And when I was doing some homework, there's a problem that we have with biology leading to inorganic chemistry and mining. Mike has found a lot of heart rocks that are shaped exactly like hearts, but they're rocks. But they've got all the right places for the aorta and the ventricles and different things to come through, but they're rocks. They're silicon. They're not carbon based. And as we've been looking into that lately, he's found trees that mines in the ground resemble trees in structure. And once again, we're talking silicon based organic chemistry. But there's stuff that they tell you can't be done in chemistry that can be done with chemistry. And I think I know a lot about chemistry because I've studied the game for a while.
Yeah, I think so.
And if you take just the weights of carbon and oxygen and add them together, you get the weight of silicon.
Well, and it's been postulated, and I'm sure you've heard this, that there could be other, rather than carbon-based life forms like we are, there could be silicon-based life forms that would be, that would populate other parts of the universe.
Well, carbon and silicon are one right under the other in the same group in the periodic table.
Right.
And the fact that water plus carbon can create silicon tells me that there is a relationship. And the structure of water in the easy form that Jerry Pollack talked about is likely to be tetrahedral. The structure of carbon or organic matter is tetrahedral, and the structure of quartz, silicon dioxide, is tetrahedral.
Yeah.
Amazing that coincidence, isn't it?
It's not a coincidence at all.
Of course not. They'll go out of their way to tell us it is.
Yeah.
Now, Ben, the guy who I'm interviewing Wednesday, has a YouTube channel that is dedicated to him going and pulling out old newspapers and reading them and telling stories of giants and Tartaria and all sorts of things. And we just got a buzz from Upcycle. Okay. He's adding to our conversation.
Magmatic differentiation. I like that.
Magma, of course, comes from volcanoes.
Yeah.
And in the high temperature melt, they would be differentiated. But what I'm thinking more is that there has to be a mechanism to cold fusion, and that the cold fusion mechanism might be catalyzed by elements like strontium, barium, and radium, alkali earth elements that include some measure of radioactivity. And I know that barium is one of those elements used as a radio tracer for doing blood work. And I wouldn't be surprised if strontium also had a radioactive component. So in some way, the radiation must lower the barrier to fusing nuclei so that in biological systems, they can make their own elements.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
It does to me, and I'm a chemist. There's no reason to assume that it has to go through the normal distribution process that we're told. And even though I love mycelium, the mushrooms that are underground in the roots of trees, thinking that the mushrooms, the mycelia, are taking up enough metals from the soil and exchanging them with the roots of the trees for organic matter so that the mushrooms can grow on the organic matter and the trees get the metals they need to grow.
And
And
that, not
somehow
only that,
transport
not
them.
only that, Lenny, but let me interrupt. I apologize to interrupt, but damn, you're talking about something that's so fundamentally important to life on Earth, because the mycelial network allows trees to communicate with one another.
Yep.
And essentially, we've got a what we once had a rural, what's the word, a rural forest, where trees on the west coast were communicating with trees on the east coast, all the way across the whole continental North American continent, and it happens everywhere. It's what happens worldwide.
Things happen on different scales than anything we've been taught in our educational misguided system. And
Well put.
there is no reason that we should form our basis of how things work on anything that we were taught in school. I mean, really, hey, teacher, leave those kids alone. Makes
Yeah,
perfect
oh yeah.
sense.
Now you're talking Floyd. Now that's one of my favorite groups of all time. I love Floyd.
I think that 1960s, 70s, 80s rock and roll music is as good a philosophy as humans get.
Yeah, except perhaps for the Renaissance when you're talking about music. But just when you're talking about music, there's nothing like the music that was produced in the 60s and the 70s, especially 60s and 70s, with some rare instances in the 80s, but predominantly the 60s and the 70s produced the most incredible music that has ever been produced on planet Earth.
In responding to Upcycle's comment just there, cold fusion was demonstrated in my mind beyond a shadow of a doubt by Pons and Fleischmann at University of Utah in the early 1990s. But because the scientific press and academia would not accept the conclusions, they came up with the idea that the New York Times would like to do it. And publishing scientific work in the New York Times lost them their tenure and got them ridiculed outside of the science.
Well, the New
But I
York
think there's
Times is
little doubt
run by a
now.
deep state.
Yeah, we live in a deep state, all right, a deep
Yeah,
state of confusion.
yeah. Well, yeah, but there's a lot more going on than a deep state of confusion. Let's face it. Human beings are at this point confused by nature. I mean, by that's really that's an anachronistic statement. I probably shouldn't have said that. Human beings are are just they're selfish, and they're stupid. And there's one more S word that I'm reaching for. I came up with it the other day, and I was laughing. I was laughing, but
Well,
huh?
they go out of their way to deny reality
Hmm.
because it doesn't serve their purposes. And so humans are vain and inglorious. So I have a place to go to watch an interesting video that I watched earlier. I will throw the link in the chat.
Yeah, or just send it to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can watch it afterwards. It has to do with the competency crisis. And the 45-minute presentation took the view that the civil rights movement in the 1960s substituted diversity for competency. And so nowadays, everybody holds their positions based on this equality of diversity, and there's no merit involved. But
Well,
unfortunately,
diversity is it's gotten like there's something glorious about diversity now. That you know it it's way beyond competency. How
Well,
many people are really competent? At
well,
any
that's the thing. Most people who are competent aren't working in the system anymore. They
yeah.
have already realized that they're penalized for their competence. They're given the work of other people who take the credit for their work because they're doing multitasks and producing enough. And then when it comes time to promotion, you can't get a promotion because the HR departments insist that there are qualified, diverse candidates for the job.
Well, that's
So
why I left the system.
that's why everybody leaves the system.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
And so the system right
it's
now
silly
is
to be in the
being
system.
run by
You know.
people who don't have any weight for the system. And this YouTube video, 45 minutes of good conversation on what the
Yeah,
problem is.
I can't copy that, Lenny. Would you do me a favor? Would you just send it to me in a text or an email?
I can do that.
Thank
Otherwise, you can come back into the video
you. Yeah,
and it'll be in the comments.
and then it'll be in the comments.
Well,
Oh,
wait,
okay.
they don't put the comments in for about 48 hours.
Oh, I got it now. Here it is. I got it. All right.
So, anyway, the whole issue as it stands seems to me that we don't have a valid basis set for our knowledge and information anymore, and that we need to go back into every area of human concern and figure out if what we're basing our judgment on is actually even true.
Well, I mean, let's think about it for just a moment. When you just acknowledge the fact that today, in 2023, you have an enormous majority of people who were vaccinated, and they're afraid of those of us who were unvaccinated.
And you're only talking
They're afraid of us.
recent
If their
vaccination.
vaccination worked, then why would they be afraid of us? That's how stupid they are.
You and I were vaccinated for polio back in the 1960s.
Right. That was one of the few vaccinations I got. I got polio and smallpox. That's
Yeah,
it.
and who's to say those weren't contaminated too?
Yeah, of course. Although I got to tell you, I've got an interesting story about polio, and it will only take just a few minutes to impart it. But it 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 brings to light something that's so fundamentally important to the human condition, and that is when I was first born. I was a newborn. I was days old, and my mother's best friend. My mother handed me to her best friend, right here in Newport. Handed me to her best friend, and this woman was like cooing and awing and kissing me and everything and rocking me, and I was a little tiny baby, right? And then she came down with polio, and that woman was paralyzed for her entire life. And the only thing that kept me from contracting polio was my mother's immune system. I didn't need to be immunized. I didn't need to be vaccinated. My mother's immune system was what kept me from contracting polio, because her immune system was passed on to me in the womb.
I remember going to chickenpox parties where somebody's kid had chickenpox, and so everybody took their kids to the chickenpox party so
Right.
they'd get a
So they're immunized.
reasonably mild chickenpox, and then from then they had natural immunity.
Right, right. It happened with German measles and and chickenpox. Obviously, you probably had chickenpox. I had chickenpox, and I got them pretty bad, I think, but it didn't decimate me.
Well, if you go by modern medicine today, you need to get vaxxed and revaxxed and vaxxed again to prevent you
Right.
from getting ill. but yet the vaccine is what makes you ill. I don't know. I have no trust in the
No,
competence
I
of
mean,
medical doctors.
thinking that immunization is going to save you. First of all, you can't be immunized against a virus. You
I
can be
doubt that
immunized.
there are viruses.
What's
I
that?
really question virology. I don't believe that they have the substance behind what they say to
Well, they're
demonstrate.
tiny little critters, that's for sure.
I I think that basically everybody gives off viruses as part of the decomposing of cells that they're done using in the deconstruction process.
Viruses are everywhere. We're surrounded by viruses. They're in the atmosphere. They're in the earth. They're in the soil. They're in the food we eat. They're everywhere. So to indoctrinate ourselves against viruses is lunacy. Viruses are what keep us healthy.
Don't you believe that maybe lunacy is the working parameter of the day?
Oh, without a doubt. Well said. Without a doubt. There's no question that lunacy is the working parameter of the day.
So I wanted, before I finish this, I wanted to mention that the when I talked about magnesium being part of the mad cow disease,
Yeah.
it turned out that what was happening in England, where they were putting magnesium salts into oil and spreading it on top of the cows in order to repel bugs that were bothering the cows, so they wouldn't have to beat the cows with straps to get the bugs off and ruin the leather that they got from the cowhide.
And when was this? When was this occurring?
Early 1990s.
Oh, really? That recently? Wow.
And that this change to putting magnesium into the hides of the cattle and therefore into the internal systems of the cattle flooded them with magnesium, which went to the brain. And because of the way magnesium absorbs water, changed the configuration of the brain to make it into Swiss cheese.
Oh,
Now, this does not explain mad cow in deer and elk, but,
there's
it
even mad
explains
cow in
mad
humans
cow
for
in
crying out
cow.
loud.
Well, yeah, because magnesium is all over the place. And while
Right.
we take a supplement of magnesium that is buffered for use in the human body, we
Right.
do not take huge excesses of magnesium enough to change the system of water within ourselves. But water is a polar molecule, and plus two cations like calcium and magnesium are water magnets essentially. You put it
Sure.
in, and they've got a huge hydration sphere, less hydration sphere to sodium and potassium, but they also attract water. But
We
organic
come.
chemistry is 70% water.
Yeah. We are mostly water, and we
Yes.
come from the water. Anybody, anybody who thinks that humanity didn't come out of the ocean is just not being lucid. They're just, I mean, we came from the ocean, and the most conscious creatures on Earth are the whales. The whales and the dolphins. They got brains this big. They're way more smart than we are. We think we're so fucking smart, but we're on Earth. Devastating the planet that is our home. We are killing the planet that is our home. We're killing it. That's what we're doing. We're just vermin. And I hate to say that because some of us are conscious enough to act consciously and not be stupid. But there's a whole lot of people that are just really, really rabid about it's all money. It's money. Gotta have money. Gotta have money. Good God.
Well, there seems to me to be several different times in history where there were great resets. And I'm wondering if each of these resets were used to disappear knowledge so that the knowledge base that we're working from is incomplete at best and dead wrong at worst.
Right. Right.
It,
Well, we haven't really been made aware of the truth. I
the
mean,
truth,
the truth. Yeah, exactly. And then you got guys like Bill Gates and some of the other ones, who are, you know, pantheons of knowledge. That guy deserves to be burned at the stake, as far as I'm concerned. You know.
no, that's too nice for them. We got to tar and feather them first and then
Well,
burn
yeah,
them.
then the fire would last longer. Tar and feather first, and then burn them at the stake. But some people advocate just hanging them. That's way too humane. That's way too quick.
Oh, I don't know. If you make sure that they only partially fall and they don't snap their leg, you can hang somebody for hours on end before they actually quit.
That's an idea. That's an idea. That's an idea. We'll have to consider that.
You let them spin in the wind and just don't make it so that they drop and snap,
Right. You don't want to snap the neck.
right?
There's a whole lot of people that deserve it. That's for sure. Too many. Way too many.
So I just invited Upcircle in, and he may join us.
Okay. Do you know anything about upcycle?
Yeah, Harris from the other day. He and I had the long conversation.
Oh, okay. I haven't met him yet. Okay.
Okay. No, but he's been dropping some comments here, and I think he can add to the conversation.
Beware the truth.
Harris, this is
Oh, yeah.
Bruce. Bruce, this is Harris.
Harris, I've seen you before. Nice to see
Hello,
you.
Bruce.
How
Nice
the
to
hell
see
are
you.
you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Hello, Doc.
Beware the truth.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
No, it struck me that when earlier today I was listening to Analog, my guest on Wednesday, and he mentioned something about the chemistry of radium, that radium is an alkali earth, barium and strontium, the components of chemtrails, are alkali earths, calcium and magnesium, two elements that are totally necessary in organic life systems, are alkali earths. And I've been looking for a mechanism to explain how trees and people and organic things can petrify. And the cold fusion on its own doesn't work, but radiation modified cold fusion based on alkali earth elements, which are not generally considered catalysts like the transition metals, but are certainly capable of it and have an extended s orbital that melts pretty nicely into p orbitals of carbon, which anybody who's taken organic chemistry can really tell how things work in that sphere. But I think the organic chemistry that we were all taught as the basis for life is a put on, and that the
Yeah.
real basis of life is the water.
Oh, there's no question that the basis of life is water. Anybody who questions that is just missing something completely and utterly uh, fundamental to life on at least on this planet anyway.
Well, I'm going to postulate that memory and consciousness are a function of the water. And the brain in the organic structure is more like the laptop I have that's conveying the signal here than it is germane to what consciousness is all about.
Yeah, consciousness is definitely it's involved by water. Water is fundamental
And
to
so
all consciousness.
when you get to the chemistry of defining biochemistry and you dewater the system in order to go crystals, and then you use that dewatered system as the basis for all mechanism, you've just misled everybody about how things work.
Yeah, and they do that on purpose, don't they?
Sure seems that way, doesn't it?
By the way, I also believe that everything has to do with water, and also how not only human beings, but also all the organisms living on this planet, they are affected by the moon. And we also have even the oceans and the seas, they are affected by the moon in terms of tides and all of that. And we are basically, if I am not mistaken, 70% made of water, something like that. So yeah, the importance of water cannot be underestimated. And I believe maybe this is the one of the very few things that most of us agree, let's say. And as Bruce said, anyone that doesn't believe in the essence of life being water, maybe they are on a different page.
Well, they're just denying a fundamental reality. That's all. But we have been schooled to avoid and forget many fundamental realities, and so we're not well schooled in school, and we are only educated if we kept learning. We had to keep learning. We had to keep moving and progressing and evolving as not only as human beings, but as intellectual beings. We had to keep moving. You can't stop. You can't just go, oh, I got my PhD. Okay, fine. That's the end of everything. Now I'm really knowledgeable, and you can pay attention to me, and you can pay me a huge salary. Thank you very much.
It doesn't work that way. If you don't echo the chamber, you don't get the huge salary that they promised you.
Right. Yeah, you got to echo the chamber, right?
I have a question for both of you.
Yeah.
Is the Earth a living being?
Yes.
Definitely. What did you say?
In that case,
Yes.
Yes. It's definitely a living being.
And it's 70% water, roughly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Between the land space and the oceans and such.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe the Earth has a consciousness that is similar to human consciousness and a fractal thereof.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say that is what's the appropriate way of putting that? That's something that a human would think.
So why would we not think that maybe all these crop circles that are arising with sacred geometry patterns are coming from the Earth, attempting to talk to us, that maybe those leaders that are so well respected have used frequency to make it so that humans and the Earth don't quite resonate in the same spheres any longer, so that the frequency that we have is not available to the Earth directly as it may have been in the past.
Okay, I have a small comment there. Not so much about crop circles, because I'm not very familiar, let's say. But what I can say is the following. If I am not mistaken, Earth, it's the only planet in our solar system that has tectonic plates, so earthquakes. So that means that we are special, let's say our planet is special in that regard. And I was always considering earthquakes as like this type of signal that comes from the core of the planet upwards, so everyone living there can actually feel it. And sometimes it's like it's like a localized signal. It doesn't go everywhere, but from our knowledge from the past, there have been different, let's say, scales of magnitude of earthquakes. So maybe this is also something that has to do with the resonance and the frequency of the Earth, of the planet, and this is how I personally understand this special circumstance that our planet is, it's a rock that it's hovering into empty space, going in an orbit around the sun. That is the source of light and energy and all of this. So maybe something like that. So it's not only that we are part of water, but also maybe something has to do with these frequencies and even the seismic waves that take place.
If you would allow me, I'd like to throw both of you guys a hell of a curveball now. Just for the sake of throwing a hell of a curveball. All right.
Yes.
To get down to real biochemistry. Okay?
Yeah.
Imagine for a moment, what do you got on your head there?
I put a helmet because you said something about a curveball. I'm trying to just be fun.
I don't think you need the helmet.
Okay.
This isn't dangerous. This isn't dangerous. I hope it's eye-opening and spiritually opening.
Yeah.
Wasn't the helmet tinfoil?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you might need it then. All right, so imagine this. Imagine our solar system now as a fluorine atom.
Fluorine, okay.
Fluorine atom, okay? And then you got the asteroid belt, which was a planet between what is now Mars and Jupiter, the fourth and fifth electron in our atom. And that would have made us neon, which is the most common element in the universe. Okay? And so we could be part of just about anything. Anything that is an atom within a molecule within something much larger. So talk about a universe within a universe.
Okay, now expand that through another 34 scales.
34 scales, why?
Because there seems to be 10 to the 144th power of dimension, 10 to the minus 34 up to 10 to the 89th. And each scale is separated by pi, so that 1 to 1,000 is a factor of 3 because there's 3 zeros. So you need 3.14 separation to be far enough away so that there isn't the influence. But over and over, the same narrative of the same humanity comes on different time frames, but the short ones, the microseconds, the milliseconds, the even shorter ones, femtoseconds, come and go, normalized to human existence to be an 80-year life cycle, but they're all working on one aspect of a problem. And as you get to longer and longer length in the normalized 80 years, you get to closer to the real essence of what human is.
Yeah, but 80 years is just a whisper. It's just a whisper.
But it's normalized.
You know, stand here on the surface of our planet and look out at the sky, and we can only see just a little small part of the Milky Way galaxy. We can only see a little small part of it, and the universe is, let's acknowledge it to be, in this paradigm, for lack of a better word, there's probably a better word. The universe is absolutely so immense, it's infinite. And I just brought up something that makes the universe that much more infinite. incredibly infinite. We could be just like just like uh, a fluorine atom in a piece of in a piece of cow shit in another whole universe.
And we'd probably have multiples of ourselves running around in different parallel universes using the same narrative, all trying to fix the current problem, which is where we're stuck until we get past whatever it is that is currently controlling the geophysical harmonics of the political system.
Wow. Did you say that again? Backwards?
System harmonics, political geo. Nope.
Wow.
But
That was quite a statement, Lenny.
it really seems to me that everything we assume is likely wrong, and that each of us need to go back into our fields of knowledge and question the basis of them. And from a chemistry standpoint, I have trouble questioning chemistry because I'm learned in the mechanism of chemistry and don't have a perspective. But I can criticize physics or biology from the perspective of chemistry and know that I have an idea of something going on. So if somebody can ask me some good questions in chemistry, I think I can maybe come up with things. But once again, we're talking about water being the seat of consciousness, which violates both chemistry and biochemistry, at least by what the powers that used to be want to tell us.
Okay, so it's a very interesting question that Bruce asked. Unfortunately, I cannot add a lot there, and because I'm not so familiar with chemistry, let's say, and the analogy there. But what I can say is something from my personal research, let's say, that is going on in the past few months. It has to do with the following. When we are trying to understand fractals and perform, let's say, fractal analysis in order to, let's say, research a bit or explore these underlying patterns out there, what I basically realized and learned about is that fractal analysis has some types of limitations, and there is something called wavelet analysis that can actually move a bit beyond and offer to us some additional insights, let's say, that fractal analysis couldn't have done so. So this is what I just wanted to add.
No, you got to say something more than that. You're not done yet, are you?
Okay, basically what you said about this, what you said about this analogy, let's say, with different elements, it reminds me of fractals. Okay,
Right.
so it's just different scales, as the doctor said. So you can understand it from the quantum scales and going all the way up. So we are talking. I don't want to start talking about macroscopic quantum effects here, but maybe I'm not so familiar with the chemistry in order to feel comfortable to share my thoughts more deeply. But it has to do with the olfactory realm. This is what I understand. Maybe I don't know, some elements they have this let's say smell that can actually go and pierce towards different scales, let's say. So I don't know, maybe the doctor can help me a bit with this line of thought.
Well, there's no question that olfactory systems can recognize chemistry in small amounts and detect presence or absence of a chemical being there. Anybody who knows the smell of sulfur knows to get out of the house if they smell the sulfur, because sulfur is added to natural gas in order to give us an incremental signal that tells us, hey, there's a gas leak here.
Yeah, so don't light a match.
On different scales, things are not necessarily the same as they are on the scale we're given. And I kind of think that the difference between adjacent scales is 50%.
Mhm.
Between scales separated by a scale is 25%. By scales separated by two scales is 12.5%. So that you have to be at least 3 scales apart before you can even think about fractals. But that doesn't mean you can't be 7 scales apart or 30 scales apart or whatever. But a fractal doesn't repeat the scale that it is a fractal to. It just rhymes with it. And this idea that we have a fixed narrative at human scale is what has me bothered right now, because they're using it as a corral mechanism for their human cattle. And as long as we buy into the premise that economics is the only way to run a system, we're stuck in an economic system that is not only broken, but is crushing all of us under the weight of the thievery.
Yeah.
Well said, my friend.
Yeah.
You are so right. You are so right. The fact that economics and money is at the basis of just about everything that goes on in this culture shows us really how sick this culture truly is. It's really sick. It's depraved.
Yeah.
It's depraved. You got all these people that are that are promoting pedophilia and child trafficking and adrenochrome drinking, and it just goes on and on. It's just so evil. It's so evil, and that's what we've become. We have become that evil. And some of us, thankfully, are conscious enough to stay away from that evil and view it and see it as evil.
So we exclude ourselves from that we.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. The we that wages war, the we that
not
is
we.
Yeah. We're not part of that we.
No, we are each individuals, and we're all an individual on human scale. And the all is one that we're never going to get a consensus, but somehow we live in what we call consensus reality. But somehow that has been manipulated so that we as individuals don't have to sign off or buy into it. So maybe the solution is to base life on chemistry and force everything to have a balanced equation to start with. So if we have an endless loop where money seems to be created by banks on a spur of the moment and spent by countries to make this eternal war, we at human scale not only have to come up with a new reality that doesn't include that, we can't even waste our time looking at it and saying, oh, that's bad, you have to change. We just basically need to ditch it.
Basically what you said, for me the problem is it has to do with the isms that are still around, materialism being the number one of the most problematic ones. To find and offer a solution, it's the difficult part. I am not saying that I have a solution, but what I am saying is that maybe we need to engage in a discourse that is healthy and that in a way tries to reclaim and even salvage some of the, let's say, philosophical truths that they remain below the dirt for many centuries. What I mean, for me personally, it is the Stoics with their philosophy that they are promoting materialism. But if you ask the Stoics about what is the Stoic philosophy, they will start telling you a lot of nice things. What they will not tell you is that it's all about materials. And I am allowing myself to say a few things against the Stoics, because the guy that created the school of Stoicism is from Cyprus. This is something that not many people know. It's Zeno from the Zeno or Kitievs. That's how he's called. It's not the same Zeno with the Zeno of Elea. That's the one that has to do with the paradoxes. But he was the one that created this school of thought. And I have some personal, let's say, issues with that school of thought, and particularly because of their insistence on material things.
I think we're having one of those conversations, Paris.
Okay.
We are having one of those conversations, and it's so important for we, not just the three of us. It's important for we who are conscious to communicate with one another, and not just walk around staring at your cell phone.
Yeah.
We need to talk, and we need to have discourse, and we need to discuss different ideas, and we need to disagree as well as agree. Disagreement is also very important because it allows us to communicate in a way that could potentially change someone's mind about something in regards to, pick a subject, politics or even science. We have been fed so much bullshit in our lives. We have been propagandized. Since we were first able to listen to anything, including just the cooing of our mother.
Yeah.
And our grandparents were propagandized, One of the reasons why there's worldwide war, for crying out loud, It's just like the war never stops. When does the war stop? When are we going to get conscious enough to stop the war? Just one element.
I think it's just the medium that changes. The propaganda just evolves according to the new medium that is available. It used to be newspapers.
It's an ongoing paradigm, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's one of those things where history is just the story of war anymore. And other than the Renaissance, there really is no history of anything other than war. And I wonder if the Renaissance was a true event, or if maybe it was a bastardized story in order for us to treat a guy named Leonardo da Vinci with the same reverence as they now treat Einstein. Einstein was a patent clerk. He wasn't a physicist.
Yeah. And we have nothing but history to rely upon to make some sort of a judgment about the Renaissance, not to mention many, many other things.
For the moment.
Yeah. Well, it would be good if we did have a time machine. I'd be all for it. But we have differences in regards to what we think time really is.
Have you read H.G. Wells's The Time Machine recently?
Not recently, no.
I recently reread it, and I was amazed at how little I remembered of it and how much it was really a non sequitur. it wasn't so much about what we think time is about, but there was some deep philosophy involved, what Wells said. But H.G.
Yeah.
Wells is this very, very interesting character who seemed to have advanced information of the future and wrote out a 2 volume history, maybe 1700 pages of the history of the world, in which he pretty much set down the history that we now believe. But I don't think it was real. I think that somehow Wells was pre programmed in order to be able to do this. And I still go back to the conversations that Nostradamus and Dolores Cannon supposedly had, because Dolores Cannon was a modern day researcher who had found a way to communicate with Nostradamus in the 1560s. And he was explaining to her the meaning of the quatrains that everybody wonders about. And then he found out that she was a female and cut her off completely.
Wow. Wow.
Okay.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah, it gives one an entirely different perspective of the world. I also like Dolores Cannon's concept of background people. Like the people who show up at the airport when you have to catch a flight. They're not real people in the real world, but the world creates them just to be at the airport because we expect them to be there. And then after we get on the flight, all those people at the airport just disappear again and never really were.
That's funny.
Like, yeah, you wonder if they ever really were. Yeah.
What you said, Doctor, I find it to be intriguing, especially the part about the enlightenment, let's say. What happened back then? I think it got replicated some years later with the resonance and the enlightenment and different reinstantiations of the same philosophy. And always, if you are into history, you will pick out a very particular notion of the Patreons, something that is still relevant to this day because there is a platform called Patreons. So back in the days, there was the Medici family. It was a very wealthy family that they were actually behind all those illustrators and painters, and they were trying to, let's say, guide the aesthetics of the time, let's say, to put it mildly, as they saw fit. So this is something that keeps going on. And I had another point, what you said about Einstein being a patent clerk. So you know what that reminded me? It reminded me the following. When you submit a paper in a journal, sometimes you cross your fingers and you wait for them to accept it, let's say. But in case it doesn't get accepted, unfortunately, sometimes you realize that those editors that you don't know, those reviewers that you don't know who they actually were because they are not disclosed, actually publish some papers with your ideas that got not accepted before. So maybe Einstein was just sitting on his patent clerk desk, and he was going through the, those newly incoming patents, and maybe he picked up some idea that for some reason it got accepted as a patent. This is just my own conspiracy theory, let's say, on the subject.
No, I think you're totally correct. And when I was in graduate work, the first paper I got to work on, that's exactly what happened. It was rejected by the peer reviewers, and we found out that one of the peer reviewers had already submitted something similar, killed our work so that his work would be accepted as first.
Yeah. And isn't it strange that many times you see this phenomenon in the academic world of simultaneous discoveries. Isn't it really, really strange that two people from two different regions, they came up with exactly the same
Like
idea?
Leibniz and Newton both came up with calculus at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Well, gentlemen, this has been a fascinating discussion, but we have reached the hour mark.
Yeah.
And I don't like going too much past the hour mark because I think that it loses viewers when they look at it and they see 2 or 3 hours. So I'm going to call thanks to the audience and say that it's been a pleasure being with you today and that we'll be back again at least on Wednesday because I have an interview with Analog who reads old newspapers and comes up with some interesting different facts. So we'll catch y'all later.